Hey, Love Your Life fam. It's Crystal and Andre Holland.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, looking forward to hearing from you. So to find us, you can check us out on
Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Stitcher. We look forward to hearing from you all.
Yeah, we came a long way, and that's what the song say. And I can do all things. I can do all things. Yeah, I can do all things. Yeah,
hey, Love Your Life family. Welcome back to another Loving Your Life podcast. It's your sis, Crystal.
What's going on, fam? It's your boy, Andre, and we're back at you.
Yes, we are, with another discussion about loving your life. How you doing this morning?
Doing well. You know, obviously, the nation is still reeling. So, you know, we're still kind of just looking at everything that's going on, different protests and so forth throughout various cities. And for me personally, just still trying to wrap my mind around the magnitude of all that is going on, while simultaneously being focused on things that needs to be done day by day, week by week. You know, and that's one of the things that it's kind of intriguing. The fact that we all have to compartmentalize at some extent in order to keep functioning, but still, you know, just wrestling with a lot of the things that are going on in America, rooted in injustice. You know.
Yeah, I concur with you. You know, just still kind of like a numbness to it, but also, you know, taking time to process little by little, because it's nothing new in our world. It's 2020. We have more media outlets. People are just capturing it now, so everybody has an opportunity to see the foolery that goes on in the lives of people on a daily basis. And so, again, I think the hard part is truly being able to talk to our children about this. We've had time to process it throughout the years of our life. And definitely the ugliness of it is definitely mounted. It is all the way up, and people are tired.
Well, and I think a big part of it is just that you said time to process, because I never want to spew hate or anything like that. And oftentimes, if we're just quick to speak, there are times that what comes out of our mouth may be rooted in hate versus a true reflection of what is in the root of our heart. So again, you know, for us, I know we've been definitely reflecting, talking to our children, and just want to make sure that, you know, we give them the reality and the rawness of what is going on, without, you know, hating people or different people groups. Again, you know, obviously we're a family that love Christ, love people, people of all colors, cultures, backgrounds, ethnicities. And so we never want to lose sight of that or project, you know, hate on our children or anyone. So I think that's important for us, just being able to reflect, take time, but really have some difficult and real and raw conversations. So not minimizing the injustices for the sake of trying to get along either. You know, we want to make sure that we teach our children to love, to respect people, to love people, but also to have them to really understand the complexities of injustices due to racial discrimination in America, and some of the things that we've had to face, but they will have to face as well. And our prayer is, by these conversations, that they would, in addition to everyone else, be change agents to continually make this place a better place, you know, day by day. So, you know, that's kind of one of the things. It's like, how can you truly get away from it? You know, this is life. This is a reality. And so we can't sugarcoat it and just talk about, fluff stuff. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I think it really goes back to our previous podcast, you know, where it's been the attempt to conceal it. And that thing is so cancerous now, it can't be concealed. It continues to expose and to reveal the heart and the root of the deep, deep hate that has been were many attempts to mask it under other things. You can't hide it, you know. And it goes back to kind of how you said, you know, the whole processing. After you process, part of the process goes back to, did you hear me?
Yeah. And so for sure, I want to be heard. I think that's a topic that we want to really get into today. I want to be heard. But a big part of this, it really deals with the ability to communicate And where a lot of people are, well, let me say this. First of all, we are not trying to say that we're the voice of everyone or every black person. Again, this particular conversation is just giving you from our experiences, our lens. But I definitely I never want to say I'm the voice of one particular people group. Yes, I'm an African-American male. My wife is an African-American woman. However, we're going to share with you our experiences, our circumstances, our viewpoint, but we never want to try to be the voice of all African Americans, because we all, even though we come from, there's many different cultures and so forth within America, we all have our own experiences. So again, this is just, from our lens. I want to make sure I say that. But I want to be heard. I think it's so important because there's so many different layers to what's going on in America right now. So many different layers. And I think for sure a huge part of it is straight out racism, blatant racism. I don't like you because you look like this, discrimination. That's for sure at the heart of it. And then there's also that kind of covert, subliminal, I didn't do anything to you, so I'm not a part of it. I mean, there's so many different layers. And I think a big part of how we bring healing is truly, I'm going to say, righteous conversations. That's just my definition. When I say righteous conversation, meaning we're talking to communicate, but we are, there's an intent behind why we're communicating, meaning there's a purpose to why we're talking. And so when I say righteous communication, meaning we're not talking just to say we met to discuss this. We're talking to bring about righteous change and put policies and things in place that are going to be change agents. And so one of the frustrations as we talk about, I want to be heard. I was just looking at Facebook, watching a lot of different comments and just watching the news until I had to turn it off, because at some point you just get, for me anyway, it's just like, man, enough is enough. But there's so many different angles, so many different viewpoints. One of the things that has been a common theme is, why are people looting and rioting in their own and tearing up their own cities? Again, I've said this numerous times. We love people. We respect the law. And I never want to give anyone a pass for doing anything destructive. But I want to stress this. I want to be heard. One of the frustrating things is the comments people are making about property, valuing property that's being destroyed, and that is not okay. But they comment about property being destroyed, and some of those same people don't make a comment about the value of a human life. Where George Floyd had his life taken, murdered by a police officer who had his knee in the back of his neck for 8 minutes. That's frustrating. We want to talk about property. Is it okay to riot and loot and steal? No, I'm not saying that. Do I agree with that? No. But I want to stress the frustrating aspect is many people feel like they're not being heard. They're not being taken serious. And that frustration piece is huge. Okay. And so when we look at, as a result of what's going on, the different protests and so forth throughout various cities, in the United States of America, including the one I live in, Phoenix, or a suburb of Phoenix. Okay. I mean, that's a reality. People are frustrated. I get tired of turning on the news and seeing another black man killed at the hand of police officers. And I know someone right now, well, what about black on black crime? I get tired of seeing that too. Please, I'm not giving anyone a pass. But if people have a hard time seeing the difference between you pay your tax dollars to be protected and served by the police officers, and these same, not all, again, we know a lot of great police officers, so I don't want to put everyone in the same, the same cup, for lack of a better term. But I want to say this, our tax dollars are paying for police salaries and so forth. And so when you see your tax money at work and such an injustice is taking the life of someone who is already handcuffed and laying on their back, begging, saying they can't breathe for 8 minutes, that gets frustrating. Okay, so I want to say to all my sisters and brothers of all ethnicities, I just want to share with you from my lens, there is a level of frustration that is a major part of this issue with the taking of black lives by police officers. Because, from one, our tax dollars are paying their salary, and no one wants to pay for something where they feel like they're getting abused for the very thing that they're paying for.
I want to go back to when you said, when questions are raised about what about black on black crime. Mm-hmm. I think that we have to, again, go back. We have to utilize our God-given minds. When you raise a question like that, you have to ask that same question across the board for every race. If you look at predominantly Asian communities, Hispanic communities, black communities, white communities, most of the crime that is done is committed against the same race. And so you have to go back and look at, is that a question to deflect, going within and checking your own conscience about where you stand concerning the opposite race? Because that is very factual. There is more. Yes, there's black on black crime. There's white on white crime. There's Mexican on Mexican crime. Asian on Asian crime. So why? Because we live amongst those that are in our community. So that is where most crimes are committed. And so for me, I throw that question out. We're not dealing with that. We're dealing with systemic racism. We're dealing with systems that are in place because people have not been heard. And when you are heard, here's the fruit of being heard: solutions.
Right. Well, that's a huge part, because when I stress I want to be heard, it's not just you hear me talking. It's we converse. I share with you issues that are a concern of me, and then we come together, and there is corresponding action to correct injustices. And that's, again, a major part of the frustration. People have been saying this for years, and unfortunately there is not enough corresponding action. And yes, I have a part to play in that. I've shared with you before. There's many ways that we fight this battle, this systemic issue of racism, by raising up teachers, educators, lawyers, doctors, people who are legislators, putting our resources in organizations that are solution oriented. So again, there are many ways that we tackle this, and everyone has different skills, talents, and abilities. I encourage, again, like I said before, this is not just a black issue. This is a human issue. And so regardless of our background, our cultural identity, our ethnicity, where we're from, this is an issue that truly affects the fabric of America and American citizens. And I'm just encouraging all of us, let's come together for meaningful solutions, because I'm grieved, and to be honest, I'm frustrated. I'm angry. And again, I want to make sure that I do everything within my power to channel my anger and frustration in a positive venue to promote a righteous change. So for sure, I want to be heard. I stress conversations are not just the point of talking. It's to bring about corresponding actions that's going to right some of these wrongs. That's huge. And then I want to share this, even as we talk about, the latest George Floyd that we know being, killed by a police officer. The other comments people are making, well, look at the rioting and the looting again. I just want to stress this too, though. Listen, I don't care what uprising. There's always going to be people, opportunists, that take advantage of a situation for their own agenda. That doesn't mean that reflects the totality of the meeting or the totality of the why people came together. And so if you get any group of people around for any cause, one of the detrimental things, there is going to be a percentage of people that come to the table with their own agenda, but that should not take away from the purpose of why people meet for a righteous cause. So again, I want to stress, I'm not giving people a pass for burning buildings and destruction and so forth, but I want you to understand, don't try to label the whole organization or the whole gathering or the whole meeting as these are a bunch of thugs, and I have to say this, which again deals with the anger and the frustration. There are many people, they don't know how to protest. When they take a knee, like Colin Kaepernick, who led taking a knee during NFL games. I mean, being called thug, all types of curse words, being ridiculed, just bashed by the media. It's just a lot of influential people in power, the president just making all these asinine comments because he's taking the need to highlight the very injustices that we're dealing with now. So part of the frustration too, people don't know, well, how are they supposed to address the issue? When I take a knee peacefully, you have a problem. Okay? What if I talk about it, you have a problem. If I don't talk about it, I mean, it's like, well, okay, so what, when people get to the point where they feel like they're hurt, they're not feel like they are hurting and they have no outlet, a result of that is a powder keg. And people have done a lot of things that are out of frustration and anger and just exploding on the inside. Well, eventually that stuff spills out again. So we're not trying to give anyone a pass, but I'm trying to help people, give them a lens or another perspective that they may not be aware of. People are frustrated. And then, I was just sitting here thinking today, it's just like, man, I can't even imagine seeing that firsthand. They showed like a woman and her child and, various people standing around these police officers as this man was gasping for air, begging for his life, saying he can't breathe. There were people watching it firsthand, filming it. I cannot fathom standing there watching this go on for 8 minutes and the level of restraint and control it had to take to not want to go over there and get the police officer off this man. I mean, that you talk about, not having control. I mean, that's a whole nother level of control and trying to do the right thing in the midst of someone's life getting taken, man. I mean, and so I just want to stress, when I tell you I want to be heard, listen, people got to understand, people are tired. People are tired of the same situation. And, at the end of the day, America is grieving. Many people are grieving. In the midst of the pain, hurt, frustration, anger, there's underlying grief that many people are dealing with.
That, and then, a dear friend said to me this morning, if you sit and you think about historically, Black people have not been protected. I want you to think about that. When you have not been protected, and take that in, absorb that in. And if that has never been your experience, being able to empathize and have a level of compassion for those that have never been protected. And so what are they doing now? They are finding a way to protect themselves, and it's going to come out in different ways because everybody has their own individual story and journey to where they are now. But any human being can only see that for so long, and we're equipped with a lot of stuff that we didn't have in the past. There's a lot of educated people now that are at the forefront, people that are in positions of power that are in the forefront, that we've had to labor and pray and work hard. We've had to sacrifice to get into these positions, to get to where we are today, and we will no longer be quiet.
Well, and I'm going to stress, I think that it's not, because again, I'm definitely a believer. It's not just praying, it's work. And so, because faith without works is dead. So people coming together of all cultures, background, ethnicities, experiences, coming together and working together for a united cause. Because I'm a firm believer that love is more powerful than hate. Okay? Love is more powerful than hate. But hopefully we can love each other enough to come together and have meaningful conversations, that are rooted in bringing about righteous change versus your comfort level. Again, there's a time for everything. And part of it too, everyone, not just Black people, there are times we have to compartmentalize for the sake of getting a job done and doing something that needs to be done that may not be directly related to how we're feeling. And so, yes, I know there's a time and a place for everything. Many of us, you have different careers or you do different things, and you have to focus on whatever it is you're doing your day to day for your career, your business, your job, whatever it is, for the sake of, that's why you're getting paid. So yeah, be smart. There's times where you do have to compartmentalize. So I'm not saying that, but my goal in even having this discussion is that, we spend time, we make time, bringing about righteous change. And this is an issue that for sure, when we deal with systematic racism or hate and so forth, that truly needs to be addressed. And it's going to take a multitude of people coming together. Again, I'll stress, this is not a Black issue. This is a human issue. Okay. And so all people coming together and bringing about a righteous change. I mean, even if, again, There's so many things that's happened between now and slavery. But again, slavery didn't end just by black people joining together. Yes, it was black people protests and so forth, but there's a lot of abolitionists that were white. So again, my brothers and sisters of all ethnicities, white, black, red, Hispanic, we go on and on. It's about all people coming together to address a human injustice.
Just going back and reflecting on my particular journey growing up, grew up with a father who, just grew up in the South, dealing with it, hitchhiked his way to college, educated himself. And part of what shaped me was hearing how much he had to navigate through dealing with the racism, being the first black man in a position of power in the state of Arizona, and still continuing to plow, having his black wife and his black kids, and the different things that we had to walk through, experience, and sometimes it being so surreal, like, man, and looking at history, okay, well, it's this year now, and it's this year now, but how does this thing continue to rear its ugly head, dealing with racist neighbors, being stopped by the cops on a daily basis, and doing nothing but walking home from school? What are you doing? Where are you going? Home from school. I'm like, man, is this a hobby? And as I make this comment, let me be clear. We have sisters and brothers that are on the police force that we absolutely love, we support, and we pray for their safety daily. And so we're not making any comments that's putting one individual or a group of people and beating them up verbally because they're all evil. We don't believe that at all. But being able to look at your story, identify how you're contributing to the problem, and then going within and truly working through that. Like, would you want to spend a day in the feet of an African American? You have to ask that question and be honest. And I'm not talking about, well, yeah, I would pick this person because they're beautiful or because they have this amazing husband or, for low level stuff. But would you truly want to navigate through the shoes of an African American in 2020?
Well, and then I'm going to stress too, the reason why this is so deep, because I firmly believe, regardless of, let's say, these other police officers that were standing around when this police officer, had his knee in the back of George Floyd's neck for over 8 minutes. Okay. That's a part of, it takes a village or a multitude of people. There should have been another police officer or officers coming to his side and say, hey man, okay, that's enough. Get off of him. He can't breathe. Okay. At the end of the day, emotions depending on the situations, emotions can overtake anyone. None of us are exempt of being overtaken by our emotions. But the purpose of an organization should be to protect that organization and one another. And there should have been, for the sake of human life, there should have been other police officers, instead of standing around watching in the midst while George Floyd passed away or was, gasping for his last breath. There should have been other police officers getting this police officer off of his neck. And that ties back to the frustration. How in the world does anyone think it's okay to stand by and let that happen? And then if there had been people that had jumped in, there could have been more dead people shot and killed, saying you're interfering with a police investigation or you assault on a police officer. But that's the part of the frustration. That is exactly the part of the frustration. People standing around recording, thinking that yelling, shout, he'll stop. He didn't stop. George ended up dying. But yet, if people had physically intervened, they would have been charged saying you assaulted a police officer. That is the frustration. Many people feel like they're trapped in a box and they don't know what to do, or everything that they do, there's a problem. And again, that is the reason why it breeds so much anger, so much frustration. And this conversation is to bring about dialogue for righteous corresponding action. That's just the heart of it. It's so many different layers. And so when people make these, comments, again, obviously we live in America. So, but I sit and watch, different posts on social media. They'll make these comments, and again, that's from their lens, but sometimes it's so shallow because it's not it's not really reflecting the complexities of all the things that are going on. This is not just an isolated incident. People are like, I don't understand why they're acting like that. This is not just an isolated incident. This is systematic years upon years. And yes, I'm a product of, many of my ancestors that suffered a lot more than I did. So everyone I would think is thankful to be where they are now and feel that it's much better in a lot of different ways in 2020. But that still doesn't mean that there's an underlying current that's still causing many of the same issues, just in a different form. And that's what has to be addressed.
Let me tell y'all how the simplicity in starting the healing process is. As a little girl, we grew up and we moved a lot. My father worked for the government, and everywhere that we moved, we ended up on the street, living in a neighborhood, not on the street, but in a neighborhood where there was a racist neighbor. And when I was, I want to say 12 years old, this neighbor, he was a retired sheriff. And he pulled the 12 gauge out on my brothers. He would open up the window, throw all type of racial slurs, especially when they were, outside hanging out. Our house was literally the United Nations. We had people of all different ethnicities and backgrounds. And this one day I was sitting out on our driveway, and I was literally probably half an inch away from his grass. And he opened up the window and called me a racial slur and told me to get away from his yard. I remember it just paralyzed me with fear. And I went in the house, told my dad, and I stayed in the house because I didn't know what was getting ready to go down. But my dad went out there, handled the business, and kept it moving. I didn't ask any questions. But I remember walking home and stepping off the sidewalk every time I got close to their house because I was afraid of that happening again. Mind you, a child, little girl dealing with this. And one day, as I'm walking home, his wife comes out and she asked me to come to her door. And I kept telling her no. And she promised me that she would not hurt me. And after probably about 5 minutes of conversing with me, I finally went to her front door and she asked me to come inside. And I started crying and I asked her not to hurt me. And she promised me I would not be hurt. And she came, I went in her front door. She took both of my hands and she repented to me as a white woman for the evil that was her husband was projecting to me and my siblings. And she said, that is not my heart. She said, she just explained to me how many years she had been married to him. She said, what he is doing is not okay. And as a 12-year-old girl, she restored hope in how I saw white people. I've had doctors, close friends call me in the midst of these public outbursts and rage of the killing of black men and women and teenagers. Call me and repent as white women and white men. It's starting there and then finding out how can I be of support to you and your family, and the beauty of just having raw, real conversations and extending to us their hearts and their minds to try to understand and to find out how they can come along and support versus that's not me. I didn't do it. Those were my ancestors. Stop blaming me for what other people did. That is avoidance and a lack of responsibility and really understanding and learning how you can be part of the healing process for this nation and for the globe.
And then I want to stress even that, so that what you shared, because of, and most of us, a lot of people have experienced all types of trauma and racism and so forth. But it would have been easy for you to grow up hating certain people groups or hating white people. We consciously love people and have raised our children to love all people and to get along and learn to work with all people. And so that's how change starts, by planting righteous seeds versus generation after generation, instilling in your children hate, racism, evil. This is how we change, being conscious to say, listen, regardless of this color of your skin, regardless of where you're from, your cultural identity, we are all humans, and extending the love of God towards all people. This is how we heal, people coming together. And so I want to stress, again, as we talk about I want to be heard, there has to be some forms that come together. But again, it's not just talking. People are tired of talking. corresponding action that's going to bring about righteous change. Again, this is not a black issue. This is not a white issue. This is not a Hispanic issue, or Asian issue. This is a human issue that's affecting the United States of America, and we have an opportunity to help improve and make it better. So I want to stress, listen, America's in a challenging time right now. In the midst of COVID-19, and now this latest issue dealing with, racial tension. Again, my heart goes out to every victim, that's been murdered, been killed. And it is our desire and our hope to be a part of the solution.
Absolutely. And one thing before we close out, if you are that individual out there, whatever your ethnic background may be, and you think that you are superior or you're better than any other race, or you speak against, or you have so much rage and anger because of what's personally happened to you, you have to raise the question that if you look at somebody less than you, or you hate another race so much, that is an attack against the wisdom of God. God made no mistakes when he made us all different hues. That is why we are called human beings, because we are all different beautiful shades. And there is no mistake in the wisdom of God. We are all here for purpose.
Mm-hmm. And that really speaks to the importance of doing your work, if it's therapy you need, but getting healed so that you can live a fruitful, loving life versus living a life filled with hate and anger and rage. And so I want to encourage, listen, wherever you are, help is available. Find it, go get it. But that's going to be imperative. It's going to be key. So it's been real. Hey, fam, we love you all. God bless. You all stay safe. And till we meet again.
Absolutely. Keep loving yourself and keep learning how to love others. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and YouTube. Thank you all so much. God bless you.
Peace.
Shout to the city that raised me. Shout to the people that made me. I'm from the 80s. I don't think mumbling wavy. I grew up black on a Jay-Z. Maybe I'm crazy. I ain't been wondering lately. Feel like it's there for the taking. Feel like I'm good with the changes. Know who I am. And that's the most dangerous state.
Hey, Love Your Life fam. It's Crystal and Andre Holland.
What's up, everybody?
Hey, looking forward to hearing from you. So to find us, you can check us out on
Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Stitcher. We look forward to hearing from you all.